Welcome back to another day of the 12 Days of Christmas series. Today I will be creating a Christmas themed doodle jump game with Pygame. So here you can see I have the template already set up for myself. First thing I want to work on is the bounce platform. So I'm going to make a new file called bouncer and import Pygame. And since the bouncers are random in the original game, I'm going to use the random module. So from random, I'm going to use choice and randint. From constants, get my window dimensions. So I'm going to make a class called candy cane because that's what the platforms are going to be made of. And since we're using a bunch, I'm going to inherit from Pygame sprite class for the group feature. So init group, and then I'm going to give it a Y position. So I'm going to call the super classes init, put my group in there. Self.surface going to be Pygame image load res cane convert alpha, and my rect is going to be from the surface. So self surf get rect, and then my position is going to be Pygame vector 2, and here's where I'm going to use random. So I'm going to get a position between 0 and win width minus the width of my surface, and then my Y position, well, it's my parameter. And I'm going to dictate whether it's moving left first or right first. So here's what I'm going to use a random's choice between true or false. And then my movement speed is going to be a random number between 5 and 10. So since we're doing movement, let's go back into here. Delta time, division by 100. So in the candy cane class, let's create a move method. All it needs is delta time. So self rect top left, we always want to make sure that the rect is moving at the same place as our position. If self dot right, self dot position is plus or minus the speed, else I want the x to be subtracted from my speed. Instead of using an if else statement for something as simple as true or false, dictating whether we're subtracting or adding, we can actually do self dot speed is plus if self dot right, else we want a negative randint between 5 and 10. So now we can just do this. Another if statement. If self.position.x is greater than my width minus the width of my surf, then I want self.position.x to equal that. And then I want my speed to be multiplied by -1 to go the opposite way. Else if my x goes less than 0, I want self-opposition x to equal 0, and then speed to become a negative or positive number, depending on what it currently was. And now we can make a draw method on our screen.blitz, our surface at our position. So we go into our main and say from bouncer, import candy cane. Let's make a cane group. Pygame sprite group. And let's make an instance of our candy cane in our cane group at 500. So I'm gonna go down here for cane in cane group, cane.move, pass in my DT, and then cane.draw, pass in my screen. Now if I run this again, you can see my candy cane, and I should have a screen fill. Okay, let's do 50, 10, 120 for a night sky. So now we have this, a moving candy cane that bounces from left to right at a random speed. So now let's make a bunch of canes, spawning at a uniform position from each other. So the way to do that is making a for loop when making instances. So for I in range of my window height floor divided by 100, I want to make my cane spawn equals I times 100. So now I'm going to tab this in there and then name it cane spawn. So now if we run this, you can see we have a bunch of candy canes going from 0, 100, 200, all the way to 700, all at different speeds, different directions. So now let's get our Santa going. So I'm going to make a new file called player, import Pygame, and our constants. I'm going to make the class called Santa. And we want a list of images because we're going to be going up and down. And you can see here that I have an up and down.png, self image list, Pygame image load, res Santa up, convert alpha, and then our other image load res Santa down. And that's it for our list. And then we want our actual current image to be our self.image list index 0. So self-rect, self.image.getRect. And our position is going to be window width divided by 2. So it's going to be spawning at the middle. And then just all the way at window height. So there are a couple things we need to declare before we start making any methods. So I want to find whether our Santa is moving up or not. And at the very start of the game, it's not moving at all. So I set that to false. And we want to check if our Santa is even ready to jump at all, because we want to start the game off by just standing still and then jumping once the player says we're ready for our Santa to start jumping. So self.ready false. And we want a gravity to pull down on our Santa. So self.grav 0.1. And we want a jump speed. So self.jump is 80. And we want a velocity that is going to be dictating how much is being subtracted or added to our vector y position. So we'll set that to 0 for now, unchanged. And then our speed, and then our horizontal speed is going to be set to 40. So this is going to be how fast we move left and right. That's it for the init method. So let's first get our jump method going. And it's basically just going to be self.velocity equals self.jump. And then for our move, we want to pass our DT and keys that are pressed, because we are going to be moving left and right and using the spacebar to trigger the self.ready into a true state. So self.rect, bottom left into our self.position. So if we're ready, I want my gravity to be subtracting from my velocity. So it's going to be going into the negatives. Then I want my position y to be subtracted by the velocity times dt. So if it's in the negatives and I'm subtracting using the negative, it's a positive. So really, it's the y value is increasing, but visually the Santa is going downwards. Otherwise, if the spacebar is pressed, then we want to call our jump method, and then we want ready to be set to true. So it seems that jump is already used, so let's just switch this to bounce. So I want to call our bounce, and then once ready is ticked to true, it's going to go up here, and it's going to be subtracted by 0.1 every single frame, and then gravity is going to be pulling on it. Because gravity is a movement, we do want to multiply it by dt, which will shrink the value. So I'm turning the 0.1 to a 20. So now we want to change our image depending on which direction we're falling or jumping. So here we're going to say get direction. If our velocity is greater than 0, that means we're going up, which means we need to set our up to true and image to image list 0, because that is the one that's going up. And else, if it's less than 0, then our up is false, and our self.image, our image list, index 1. And then, of course, we want to check if our Santa falls below the screen so that we can end the game. So dead. And then we want to return the boolean that confirms whether position y is greater than window height. And the very last method is going to be draw onto the screen, screen.blit, self.image, self.rect. And then in our main, from player, import Santa. I can go down here, make a Santa instance variable, and then we can first work on whether the player is dead. So if Santa dead, run false. Okay, down here we can do Santa.move, dt, get direction, Santa.draw. So up here, I'm going to get some keys, Pygame key, get pressed. So there's my little Santa. And I forgot to program the A's and D's. So in the move method, if keys, Pygame A, and I want my self position X to subtract H speed times dt, and as well as if keys, Pygame key D, self.position x plus minus self.hb times dt. So now if we run it, we are moving left and right. So now we just need collisions between Santa and the candy cane. So since Santa is a singular object and we have a bunch of candy canes, I'm going to go into our cane iteration to work on Santa in there. So if cane.rect collide rect with our Santa.rect, and here is where our Santa up comes in, because we only want collisions when Santa is falling down. So we want to say, and not Santa.up. If Santa, so here we're going to do Santa.bounce to basically mimic a jump. You didn't see that. The only problem is that it'll jump even if we're below the candy cane. So the way to fix that, if Santa.rect.bottom is less than pane.rect.bottom, indent that. You can see that it did not push us up when we were falling downwards and below the cane. Now, one thing you might have saw is that I was going super high and the canes were not moving with me. So the way to fix that is to make a new group called all group where everything will go in it. And we will put this in a list along with all group. And that will pose an issue with our bouncer because we need to make this a list of Pygame sprite group. And here, I don't think there's a way to get over this highlight, giving a warning. So I just did no quality assurance comment. And then in our player, we actually need to inherit from the sprite class, super init group. Okay, so now that we have this list done, we want to put this in our all group as well. So now that we have all the candy canes and our Santa in our all group, we are able to move them all simultaneously. So the way to do that, if my Santa position Y becomes less than half of my window height, I want to create a Y offset. Santa position Y minus window height divided by 2. So this is going to get the distance between how far my Santa is from the center of the screen, which means now that we have my Y offset for sprites in my all group, sprites.position.y minus my Y offset. So watch this. So I'm going to reach the half of the screen mark and everything starts moving up with me. Now you can see another issue. Once we start going up, my candy canes run out. We can use the modulus operator to loop the candy canes around. So in my bouncer file in the candy cane class, all it takes is a single line. So self.position y using the modulus operator here and then window height. So whenever the position is greater than window height, it's just going to start back at 0. I'm reaching halfway and our candy cane just keeps spawning through. And the collisions still work, everything still works. It's just an infinite loop now. All right, so that does it for today's game creation, and I will see you for tomorrow's game.